Evening. Welcome to Lessons of Vietnam. My name is Bill Dixon. President of North Carolina Vietnam Veterans, who puts on the show. My co-host, Mr. Bob Matthews, our educational czar, will be with us in a little bit. We're very lucky tonight. We're gonna give you a little culture. We're gonna have a playwright and a doodler. Those of you from Cary, that's an artist, pen and ink artist. Mr. Ron Harris, he's also unusual that he's a North Carolina native. We'll be talking with him tonight about a trip that he and I and Bob and some of the other veterans took this past weekend, actually this past week. We drove 28 hours just to get here tonight to make sure we got here for the show. Getting a little tired of the two guys, but we can make it through the show. Would like for you to call in at 919-518-9773 and be part of the show. Ask us some questions. Ask Ron some questions. Keep him talking. He's kind of shy in front of a camera. He probably didn't do more than 24 interviews over the past 5 or 6 days from McAllen, Texas, where we were, about 10 miles from the Mexican border. Just do say it was about 70, high 70s, low 80s when we left there today. Also, you can go into Computers 2K Voice and be part of the show, answer questions and so forth. Basically, what we're going to be talking about most of it today is a play that Ron wrote that's fantastic. That's why we're in McAllen, Texas. It was put on there, and every veteran and veteran's family who saw the show were extremely moved. It's about the wall, the Vietnam Veterans Memorial. And I just want to give you a few statistics about the wall and so forth. There's 58,000, right at 300 names on the wall. It's not in alphabetical order. It's by date of casualty, except that date is in alphabetical order. The youngest man on the wall is from Goldsboro, North Carolina. His name was Dan Bullock. He was 14 when he joined the military, 15 when he went to Vietnam. 2 weeks after he got there, he was killed. There are 31 sets of brothers on the wall. There are 54 soldiers who attended the Thomas Edison High School in Philadelphia. There are 8 women on the wall. And at one time, and I think this number is somewhat off now, I know there have been several others. Medal of Honors have been awarded since then, but the numbers I've got here is 244 were awarded the Medal of Honor. They're on the wall. The largest group on the wall is 18-year-olds. There's 33,103 of those. There's 8,283 19. There were 39,996 on the wall, just 22 or younger. There are 3 sets of fathers on the wall. So that's kind of give you an idea. If you haven't had a chance to go to Washington and see the wall, take it upon yourself to go and see the wall along with the other memorials. It's very special to us. It's not just a cold statue or something. It represents men and women who gave everything for their country and are there to so go by and realize that it represents something. Going back to Ron real quick. Ron, as I mentioned, was from Wake Forest, North Carolina. Born and raised there, and played high school football there, I believe. Ron also did something that I thought was phenomenal. He wrote a comparison of Vietnam War and and football. And what I'm going to ask Ron to do, if he would read this for us and kind of give us where it came from. This thing? Is this from here. What we got here is Wake Forest veteran reveals Vietnam through football. The comparison is strictly intentional, as by Ron. And talk about this. And was this one of your first adventures in writing?
It wasn't one of the first, but it is early writing. It's something I think I did in 1990. I went into a high school and was not happy with the response I got from the kids because they didn't understand football, didn't understand what was not football, but didn't understand the Vietnam War. It was so historical to them. So I remember thinking back, what did I have in my mind when I was in high school? And it was girls, drinking beer, and playing football, in that order. Study came way down the line. So I was a salesman at the time, and I was out riding around, and it came to my mind to do an analogy between football and the Vietnam War. So I wrote some things down. We don't have it all here, though. Anyway, I'll jump ahead. It's about a high school that's a 4A high school. It is the state champion. It's never been beat. It's all the teams, your father's team, your grandfather's teams, your uncles and brothers, all been on state championship football teams. This year, things have changed. You're going to play a little 1A high school team. This team hasn't won a game in your league in forever. But you're going to play in this team, and the school administration comes down and puts out new rules and regulations. And one of them is that you cannot play for a win. You have to play for a tie. It seems so unfair to us, but they set up new rules. What happens, the school administration told the coach to read this. It said, the school has instructed me that we must play this game by a little different than we normally play. We will be playing with a different set of rules than our opponents. We will not be allowed to pass. All of our running plays must be up the middle, no running around the end. Also, we will only be allowed to play between the hash marks on the field. This means that the other team breaks outside of the hash marks, we can't pursue them. Now, team, let's go out there and play your hearts out for a tie. And talking about running around the end, Bill, what do you think I'm referring to there?
Well, if they went into going into Cambodia and Laos with the Ho Chi Minh Trail, we were not allowed to go.
Right. So it doesn't seem fair, but that's what we're talking about. The game starts and your team is doing well despite the new rule. Your team is pushing the other team all over the field. Victory seemed assured. Stop. Remember, you're playing for a tie. Your team fights hard for 9 yards in 3 downs. Many of your players are injured getting those 9 yards. Your coach calls timeout. The coach says that the school board has sent word to your team that it has to give back those 9 yards and start from the 4th and 10 from the original line of scrimmage. You need to remember, he says, we're playing this game for a tie. What am I talking about there?
Well, when we attacked someplace and we, like Hamburger Hill, for instance, when we took the land and took the hill and then turned around and walked off and left it, we did the same thing in Quezon. Is that what you had in mind there?
Yeah. Near halftime, you notice your school fans and fellow students are moving to the other team's side of the field. They start to cheer for the other team. Even some of your school's administrations and school board members start to cheer for the other team. Now, these are the ones who sent you over there to start with, and they've turned their back and are cheering for the other team.
Sounds like Jane Fonda and the war protesters.
Well, speaking of that,
in our government.
As you limp off the field with an injury and covered in mud, your girlfriend yells to you from the stand, "Dear John, I don't like the way you're treating that other poor team. By the way, I'm going to ride home with Jody from the band."
Yeah. For those who don't know, Jody was the mythical man who was always stayed behind to help take care of the women and children, especially your girlfriend.
What about?
We always called him Jody.
What about Dear John?
And you know, a lot of guys got Dear John letters in the mail. In other words, you're over there killing babies and burning villages and and so forth, because I saw it on the news, and news never lies. So I don't want to marry you anymore. I got me a real boyfriend now, and we're going to go out and smoke a little pot and have a rally.
The head cheerleader for your team, Jane, goes to the other side of the field and starts to cheer for the other team. She yells for you to quit playing for your team and help the other team. Then you see her posing for pictures with the other team. Who would I be talking to about, Bill?
I think somebody by the name of Miss Vonda, who cheered for the other team at their home on their home side of the field,
and encouraged our team to come over to the other side.
Yeah.
During the game, some of your fellow players are knocked out of bounds in the other team's side of the field. Instead of letting them come back into the game, the other team locks them in their own locker room. POWMIAs, right?
Yeah.
The game finally ends in a tie. This is hard for you to understand. If you could have played by the real rules of football, you could have won. Changing pages. When the team gets back to the bus to return to your school, you ask the coach where your fellow teammates that have not returned from the other team's locker room. Your coach demands the return of all your players by the other team. The other coach says that he has returned all the players, and if the coach has a problem with that, he can go talk to the school board. You are forced to return to your school without a full accounting of all your fellow teammates. Having to return without your fellow teammates hurts most of all. The school board tells you there's nothing they can or you can do about the missing teammates. You're told that the best thing you can do is just to forget about them. Of course, I'm talking about POWs.
Yeah.
And how horrible that made us feel that we had to leave our friends in the field. When you return to your school, some of your fellow students and teachers say bad things about you, or worse, they ignore you. When you ask why, they tell you that it's because you tried to win the football game instead of trying to tie it. No one will sit with you in the lunchroom. Your fellow students act as if you may go crazy and hurt them. The only friends that you have that understand how you feel is your fellow teammates.
So it sounds like a story of a Vietnam veteran's life, quite a bit.
All right. The school board and the school administration and your fellow students have forgotten the football players that were left behind at the other team's field. The forgotten players only hope that you and your teammates do not forget them. This analogy may not hold up in all cases. Not every Vietnam veteran's experiences were the same. But I think that this analogy is close enough to the truth that will help some of you who are not Vietnam veterans understand why some of the veterans feel so frustrated and angry and why we are unable to let the Vietnam experience go. The comparison between Vietnam War and a game is strictly intentional.
Thank you, Ron. That was fantastic. That'll kind of give you an idea of what we're going to have for our next segment with Bob Matthews. Going to get a little bit more in depth. Ron's play is called Etchings in Stone. How many performances were done this past weekend?
There were four full performances, and then they had the students come back in on Monday, and they did a 30-minute performance, and the full performance lasted an hour and 40 minutes. So they took quite a bit out for the students, but they should know that, and the response was standing ovations, which made me feel real good.
And there was, 8 of those on Veterans Day?
8 on Veterans Day, yeah.
Ron had to play there. Also, we had taken with us the 1/8 replica of the Vietnam Wall that Al Ely did and looks after for North Carolina Vietnam vets. We were lucky enough to be able to put that up at the Texas Memorial that Colonel Frank Plummer had, and we had a very good reception there. Veterans coming through, looking at the wall, giving them printouts. It was a great trip. With your play was fantastic. Things there. So I kind of gave you whet your appetite a little bit about Ron's story here about Vietnam and football. I'm going to turn it over to Bob Matthews now and let him talk more in depth with Ron about his play. You worked on that play a long time.
It's been at least 18 years, if not more.
Okay.
I've been doing a little bit at a time.
And one who has only seen the dress rehearsal because I was busy doing other things. What I saw was absolutely fantastic. I know if you get an opportunity, you want to see it. Let us know if you're interested in it. We'll see what we can do putting something together. Remember, 919-518-9773.
You were searching for my name today. I saw you standing there. Man, you look different with that silver in your hair. Me, I haven't aged a bit, still all of 21. That's the thing about us spirits, we're forever young at the wall. Here at the wall, we were proud to serve our country when called by Uncle Sam. Then more than a little anxious, then they shipped us off to Nam. Remember all the heat and bugs, days marching through the mud, constant gunfire, smell of death, of all that blood some gave all. Names carved in this wall, but it's a wall of love, a wall that heals, a wall that touches.
Thank you, and welcome back to the show. Thank you, Bill, for a great job on the analogy, and Ron Harris for the show, Lessons of Vietnam. Welcome.
Thank you.
I was very lucky this past week to be with Bill and Ron on the trip to Texas. I'd also like to offer to the audience tonight, as Bill and Ron did, a chance to get a copy of Ron's analogy, which is really breathtaking. When you sit down and read the whole thing, as Ron has tried to put it together with football in Vietnam, it really gives you a true understanding of 5 or 6 phases. It's really wonderful. So if you get a chance, contact myself or Bill or Ron through the show. We will certainly get you a copy of the analogy. Well, Mr. Harris, let's talk a little bit about Texas, okay? First, would you tell me why you went to Texas with the group?
We were. You have to go into history. I mean, you just can't just start and give a quick answer. Last year on Veterans Day, we were at Washington, D.C. at the Nick Rowe grave site. Every year we go up there, we go to Nick's grave and have a ceremony. Some guys came up. They asked us if we know Nick, and we said, oh, yes, we do. And then they said, well, did you know they named a high school after Nick in McAllen, Texas? Well, we knew Nick was from McAllen, but we didn't know they'd built a high school. And because of the Lessons of Vietnam class that we have in the high schools around here, we said, road trip, this is a good idea. We can go down and present this course to them. So last March, we went down to McAllen, Texas, to Nicky Rowe High School, and presented the Lessons of Vietnam class. Very well received. Before I left a copy of the play, Lessons of Etchings in Stone, with the principal, Bridget Vey. And she got it to a dynamic young man who's in charge of the drama department, Mark Watson. And I got a call from them, and they said, we'd like to put your play on. And I said, great. I'm expecting a high school production. Well, we got more than the high school production. I'm not going to say it's a Broadway production, but it's somewhere in between. If you get a chance to see it, you'll understand what I'm talking about. But that's how we got to Texas through that one little incident 1 year ago.
Thank you,
and
Ron.
we put the play on exactly 1 year from the time that happened.
Thank you, Ron. You know, Ron, as we went through the dynamics of Texas, as Bill alluded a little bit to it, and it started to unfold, were you happy with what happened and how it evolved in Texas?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, they couldn't have worked any better. I didn't have to do much. I had already done my part writing it, and Mark was on the phone with me probably 100 times. What do you think of this? What do you think of that? Would this upset you? And between he and I, we were able to work it out long distance. So when we got there, and we got there just an hour or so before the dress rehearsal, and there were some problems at dress rehearsal, but they ironed out technical problems that they ironed out, and then we went. It went beautiful from that point on. I was very, very pleased with how they produced it.
You know, Ron, it seems like the wall itself, as you mentioned before, opens up so many questions. And the veterans you took with you and yourself, you spoke with many of the classes in Wake County schools and all around the nation. And I noticed as we were down there, a lot of the veterans came up, and it seemed like they needed to talk to other veterans to understand more and more. And I think your play will open up more and more dialogue.
Well, I hope so. That's the intent of it. It's part of a healing process. We've all gone through it, and we're probably all still in it in different stages of how we heal. I'm speaking only for me, my personal. If I get the emotions that I've got pent up from Vietnam, if I can get them out, either through writing or drawing or whatever artistic venue I can get it out, it helps me better. By doing the Lessons of Vietnam class, we went in and talked to the kids at the school, and it was cathartic. It's like we finally got somebody who wants to listen to us. And I found in talking to the vets who've done these classes, they get more out of it than the kids do.
Sure.
So in the long run, I think, going back to your question, it helps vets to express themselves and not just keep all these emotions bottled up. Having this play is just another vehicle to help them express themselves, to see that other people feel the same way they do.
Well, I noticed also, Ron, I'm sure you noticed this too, when you were talking to several of the people down there about why you did this and what maybe is the future of this play and how it can go maybe more and more depth around the nation, around the county, and allow more people to understand Vietnam through the wall. But I noticed as Bill was making some rubbings from the wall and giving people a little piece of history, that their questions got more and more intense, and a question led to a question. And we must have run into 3 or 4 people about 5 times. They kept coming back and talking. As Bill mentioned, they went over to the celebration at the park in Texas and talked more and more about things. I had an occasion today to talk to my sister, who you know, Judy, lives in Black, and she mentioned that she can't understand, or she does understand, why the Vietnam subject, 50 years later, is so relevant. Why people want more and more information. Would you like to comment on that, please?
Well, the last line of the football analogy says that, we have issues that unresolved. I mean, mainly, one of the things it all comes back to is the homecoming we received. I was lucky. I came back to a small town, and I did not get a bad homecoming. If anything, I was just told to put it behind me, don't worry about it, when I should have been talking about it. But there's some veterans that had a very violent, aggressive homecoming, and that can scar you after what you've been through, thinking you've done your work, doing your job for your country, and have someone treat you as such. Here again, you got the people who thought they were doing best blaming the warrior for the war, and that's just not right. Thank God, I feel like the price we paid for our homecoming has helped the veterans coming home from Iraq and Afghanistan receive a much better welcome than we received.
Sure. I think that's one of the lessons of Vietnam, is the aftercare policy of the veteran had to be upgraded. It had to be synchronized, where they could move smoothly into their next life and not have an obstacle there, or not a wall, but a block, or something kept them from remaining back in society. Ron, let me move on to the next question, because several people knew we were going to Texas. Of course, we didn't know the reception we would receive. And as Bill mentioned, we were pleasantly surprised. And we also had an opportunity to talk to the educators, the superintendent, the curriculum chairman, and several of the teachers at Nicky Rowe High School. with the possibility of embedding the course into their curriculum. And I see your wall as a stepping stone for this, because it opens so many doors, and many people will come, they'll ask where this guy is, this man or woman. This is their connection to the wall. And when one of the vets walked over with them, and they could run their finger across the wall, it gave them, not closure, it gave them a little bit of relevance. And I did notice, as I think you mentioned before, that taking the wall to Texas gave people in that part of the country a chance they'd never get, because most of the people there will never get to this thing.
No.
And so
It's a very poor part of the country. It's got the per capita income is extremely low. So and DC, believe me, after this long drive we did last night, it's a long ways away from Texas.
Sure.
And so if they want to see the original wall, they've had a couple of the moving walls come down into the Rio Grande Valley, but ours is just another tool. The wall is a tool, the play is a tool to help get the message out that you've got brothers out there that understand what your issues are, and we're trying to help you get that work those issues out.
Well, questions that comes up a lot, and you would be the expert in this, is the surge of interest in the Vietnam experience. We know the 60s were a very turbulent time in America, and Vietnam, of course, was a big part of that. But Vietnam has always been taught, but never in the intensity which we've tried to do it the past few years. What would you attribute this surge of interest in the Vietnam experience throughout the nation, college and high school?
This could be a little controversial, but I don't care. I believe it has a lot to do with a collective guilt as to the reception that the Vietnam veterans received, as opposed to the World War II veterans and the Iraq and Afghanistan veterans. The Korean veterans were ignored.
Yes.
They didn't get a bad reception. They just were completely ignored. It went from ignoring to outright belligerence when we came home. And I think people are working, and God bless them, they're working hard to make us feel like, to make it right the way we were treated. And so I see that as a surge in interest. Also, you can compare it to the comparisons between Iraq and Afghanistan and Vietnam. His obvious choice is what the surge is.
Well, you know, Ron, one of the things I've noticed before is when you use the word fair in history, it's so hard to teach everything in history.
Right.
We've talked to different instructors over the years, and some people feel very comfortable in a phase of history. Perhaps they'll spend more time on the Great Depression, more time on the Holocaust than others. And when it gets to Vietnam, this subject can be very intimidating.
Yes.
Because their background is limited, their resources are limited, and we have urged people throughout the nation to use the asset of the veterans community.
But here's the thing. If you had an opportunity to have a Civil War veteran come into your classroom and tell you what day-to-day life was on the Civil War battlefield, what great asset that would be to teaching history. Well, unfortunately, we're old now, so we're history. We're the last. When we're gone, there won't be anybody who can come in and tell you what happened in Vietnam. So I agree with you. Teachers need to take advantage of us while we're still around.
Well, can I interrupt you a minute? Just sitting over there listening to y'all, you're doing a great job. But we've been talking about the play, Ron. Give us a quick synopsis of just what the play is about, the vignettes and so forth.
The play is about the Vietnam Memorial. I spent time up there just standing and watching people and not listening to what some people talk to the wall and some people just stand there and look at it, but you can tell by their body language that something's going on that they're thinking. And with my imagination, I just make stories based on what I see up there and what I think. I didn't have anything in mind. I had done 2 drawings of the Vietnam Memorial, and it just wasn't enough. So one day I was thinking, why don't you write that? But looking at the wall, I noticed that's a unique perspective would be if we were sitting inside the wall, looking at the people coming up to the shiny marble and you're basically looking through the wall at them.
Sure.
So the audience has a seat, a unique seat, sitting inside the wall, watching the people come up. About half of the vignettes, the little episodes of people coming up, is about not about soldiers, but about people that stayed behind, the wives, the mothers, the fathers, the sisters, people who don't even know anybody. It was affected by the wall. So it's a unique perspective, I think, that makes this, because you're actually eavesdropping on these people's heart and soul, and I think that's what makes it so emotional.
That is a great explanation for this. Now, Ron, having done one time in Texas as kind of like a prototype, I'm sure you've gone back to the drawing board in your mind, or even on the long ride home, and picked at it and seen how you could do it better, how you could tweak it here, things like this, things like that. My next question to you might be this: the future of this endeavor, where do you see it developing into, perhaps?
I haven't thought about it past getting that one production done. Now I've done it, and I'm too tired to think about anything else. But I believe that we could put it on here in Wake County for the veterans in the county, and combine it with the wall and the friends we have who have collections of Vietnam items and stuff. People who have military vehicles that would be nice to have displayed there. Weapons from the Vietnam War. We could put on a hell of a good veterans gathering and have the play as sort of the finale for the gathering. People come and see all these things and then go in and see the play. I think we can do it with having real veterans and real veterans' wives and friends and community and children participate.
Sure.
To put it on so it's all real life.
Mm-hmm.
And the way we did it in Texas, they recorded the voice, had voiceover, so when someone standing at the wall, they weren't actually moving their lips, you could hear their thoughts. So people who don't want to remember a lot of lines, this would be pretty easy for them to do, is to stand at the wall and just show a little bit of motion. And then we got parts for people who want to speak the part. So we can... I think we can pull it off. But here again, I'm too tired to think about it right now.
I think we have a caller, Ron.
No, we don't have a caller, but Murphy's asking, what was the hardest decision that you made in the war?
Murphy. Okay, Murphy.
Murphy, I was only there a month, and we got attacked, a rocket mortar attack, and they were just dropping these mortars all around. And I was laying out in the street where our barracks was. I got called out going to the bunker, and I was laying there, and I had my fatigue shirt on, and I was thinking, should I go up and rip these buttons off so I can get lower to the ground? That was my hard decision. I was scared to death. That's a hard question, because over there, almost everything you did, if you made the wrong decision, could be fatal. So every day we made decisions, and it's hard to put one decision as greater than the other one. I made some bad decisions. Fortunately, it didn't cost me my life. But it's hard for me to say, yeah, this is the biggest, worst decision I made.
And Murphy says, thank you, veterans, for your service.
Thank you.
And Jude,
thank you for your interest.
Thank you, Murphy.
And Jude is saying, first let me say how much my husband Mark and I admire your strength and resolve in teaching a nation about Vietnam. What do you feel was the largest misconception students today have regarding Vietnam?
I think it goes back to the reception we got coming back. People blamed the warrior for the war. I was 19 years old, and I came from my father was a mill worker, and my mother was a stay-at-home mom, and everybody I knew in high school or my age group, they either had a choice of going to work in the cotton mill, go to the Army, or go to college. And if you didn't make it to college and didn't want to join the Army, you were going to get into it sooner or later.
Sure.
We didn't know that there were we could make decisions like going to Canada. It just in my socioeconomic life, that was not an option. We were bound for one of the three life choices.
I feel, Ron, it's a very good answer. And one of the big misconceptions, too, was that the American public was just coming into the age of massive television. There was becoming so much news media, so much input, so much interest in the war, good or bad, the information was there. And the soldier then was limited by letters, perhaps, no cell phones, no computers. Our communication pretty much by letter or armed forces radio.
Right.
I think one of the misconceptions of Vietnam was they thought that everybody went to Vietnam for the same reason. Over 4 million people served in Vietnam from all walks of life. And one of the things about, I think, your play in Texas that I noticed, the veterans, when it gave them an opportunity to ask questions that they've been holding back forever. Like they want to talk about, obviously, where they were and when they were there. Compare notes, if you will. Then they start to ask the question about when you go into a classroom and talk to students. What don't you tell them? What do you tell them? What should you tell them? Would you have a menu for that, perhaps? As maybe a game plan? If you're going to introduce your wall, our course, into a school system, you have to give them some parameters on how to do it and maybe how not to do it.
What I would do personally, I'd refer it to my good friend Bob Matthews, who's a teacher of 30 years, and because I'm really too tired to think about it. That's a hard question, Bob. You blindsided me on that. I don't have a good answer for you. So here, take it, Bob.
I will. What I have done in the past with some areas I was weak in, I would do what we talked about earlier. I mined deeply the veterans community. I would find veterans that were in the air, on the water, grunts, all kinds of, as you mentioned before, first-person history. And the social studies nationwide is going to new standards. They're going to leaving the worksheets and the websites alone, although they're vital. They want you to get as many people as you can into the classroom and let the kids build up their conversation skills, talk to people, maybe ask better questions. And with some of the school systems, the teachers are limited in the fact that they've only taught one way. It's been a one-way street. And some, when you go into the classroom, Ron, as you mentioned, it's very good for the vets to go in. It's very therapeutic. But some of the teachers are a little bit intimidated because it is their classroom, it is their time, and to give it up. So what I was mentioning to the people in McCallum was have a workshop of your teachers and include your veterans and just sit and share ideas. No one's trying to take control. It's a united effort to educate America about this time in history. Is that okay with you?
It's okay with me.
Okay. My next question, Ron, deals again with going back to Texas. I noticed that a lot of the men came up and talked a lot. And this is not a man thing, but did you notice that the women at the wall or at the ceremony at the Texas Memorial were asking better questions or more questions because of your play?
Well, I don't know that they necessarily asked better questions, but I do feel like they had a lot more questions. A lot of them, I don't know that they knew how to frame the question. They were telling us how good it was, how much they enjoyed it, and they didn't really get into. I had a question about why you did this particular vignette, why you did that particular vignette. Mm-hmm. It was so many people wanting to speak to us that it was hard to get down to that. So I gave out a bunch of cards. I hope that we'll get some calls and letters from them where they can ask these questions.
Mm-hmm. I think we have to be a sounding board to allow people to ask questions, any kind of question.
Right.
And as we've mentioned many times to the groups, there really isn't a question that's off limits because the calling cards of being a good educator or teaching a subject completely is allow all questions but the good, the bad, the ugly of everything.
When I talk to a class, one of the things I tell them right off the bat is that I will answer any questions unless it's something that I feel is just too personal to answer. And I wish they would hope that they'll respect my privacy there. But to this date, nobody's asked me a question that I hadn't been able to have an answer for, good or bad. Some of them don't like the answer, but I've been able to give them a truthful answer.
Sure.
That's why I think that when guys go in, they need to tell the truth. If I distort history just by a little bit, they retell the tale, and they may distort it a little bit, and pretty soon history's skewed. I think that's one of the reasons why we found only a page and a half in the history book when we first started this about the whole Vietnam era. That one thing was the impetus to get us all started on your course, Lessons of Vietnam.
Well, what I noticed too is the students are usually giving, they have a bad reputation. Oh, the kids don't mean this, the kids don't need that.
Oh, that's not
But
true.
when you get into school, it's very much a myth. We talk about myths of Vietnam all the time. The kids ask the best questions. They do really care. And when I talk to the veterans going into class, I said, let them into your world. Let them come in, let them ask questions, and let them be part of you. And that's where our program started, called Linkage. I know you've had some of the better links in Wake County schools where you've shared your life with them and continue to do so.
Well, the linkage program, each student can pick a vet they want, and the teacher usually gives them an assignment to interview the vet and answer a whole list of questions that they've already put together. Usually we try to take them somewhere like a Vietnamese restaurant or something so that they will get a taste of Vietnam. But it gets a one-on-one in a classroom. You've got all these. You compete with all the other students to ask the question. By the linkage program, it puts a one-on-one student and vet so we can get in-depth answers to the questions rather than just a general answer that you have for the 1 hour you're limited to the classroom. That's.
I think one of the things I noticed in Texas was when your play was going on and Al's Wall was being looked at by thousands of people, as Bill mentioned, probably 4,000 people had eyes on the product. And they were walking slowly and slower. They'd come in, they'd look around, and they'd find a vet for a question. They'd go back and talk again and come back. And we were in the area, of course, to try to answer them the best we can. Now, I want to make very clear that no one's declaring himself an expert on Vietnam, but we're declaring the trip to Texas as very successful, where we're trying to inform the public and have them ask better questions. Then, of course, go home and talk about it, and talk more about it, and bring better questions back. Now, I have a couple more for you, Ron.
Okay.
I know you're kind of tired, but a couple more. And one is, we talked about the future of this play in Wake County. Now, do you think some of the vets that have been sitting back for years, not taking part in anything except their memories, this will jog them a bit to get involved in this product and maybe take part?
I hope it does. You don't know. When you start out, things you do the best you can and hope that for the best outcome. I hope that we get a good participation. The vets don't want to do it. I'll find somebody else to do it. And then they can come and sit and watch.
I think you'll be pleasantly surprised. We have a call. Please go ahead, sir.
Hi, this is Brother Joe on the phone here. I really enjoyed the trip to Texas. What really impressed me when we were down there was the attitude of the students at Mickey Rowe High School. Those kids were so polite and so interested in what we were talking about and what we were saying. Could I have your feedback on that?
Oh yeah, what a great reception, and not just the students, the faculty, the administration, going all the way up to the district. We got great reception from the district superintendent who came to see the play, and came out to the on Monday to the Vietnam, not the Vietnam, but the Texas Memorial. The teachers were. We couldn't do anything. We asked anything. We needed to print some extra copies or something. The teachers were, how many do you need? It was just, we were overwhelmed by the hospitality. Mark even took us out at the Saturday night's plays. We went to a real Texas barbecue at a friend of his, and that was some good food. Not North Carolina barbecue, but good Texas barbecue.
I think, Joe, one of the excuse me, impressions was, as Ron mentioned, the school was ready. They had to have meetings and forth and say, the guys are coming from Carolina, and we're going to put this on, and we need to honor all of their requests. Make copies for this, make extra copies for this, tables for this. Little mundane things we needed. As Ron mentioned, not one thing was turned down. I left totally impressed with not just what Ron and Al did, because that has always impressed me, but how we were received and what we left with. I think we left an impression, and this being Wednesday night, I hope they're still talking about it.
Joe.
Yeah, go ahead.
While you're on the phone, I want to thank you. I want to thank Ange Carmine. I want to thank Bob Matthews. I want to thank Bill Dixon and Al Ely. I was just going to fly down by myself and go to the play. And all these guys said, oh, no, I'm going with you. I'm going to support you. Great brotherhood, brother. And everybody paid their own way. That's the other thing. It was an expensive trip.
What impressed me about your play, Ron, is that it's so real, and it comes out. There's no guessing about it. You kind of, use a better term, it kind of hits you in the face and says, this is real. And us guys that went through that kind of stuff knows it's real. And I think kids and the adults that came to the play, the showings of the play, kind of realize that, because your play just jumps off the stage at you. And
Thank you, Joe.
we really appreciate it. And I'm going to hang up, let somebody else call in, and just say, welcome home, boys.
Thank you, Joe.
Thank you, Joe.
Ron, as we talk about this and we wind down the show, the part of the lessons of Vietnam, one of the major things is for people perhaps to understand that when you do leave this wonderful country and you go away for a year, it's not like a light switch. You can't shut it off. You come home and say, as Bill mentioned earlier in the show, get on with your life. When you mentioned about coming home to Wake Forest, Vietnam becomes part of you for the rest of your life. I think Bill might have mentioned this, though he mentioned it to me today.
Not just Vietnam. I'm sure the guys from Southeast Asia, Southwest Asia, are saying the same thing.
Of course they are.
That it's always going to be with them. You can't serve and not have an effect on you.
You talk to someone, and one of the opening questions we always ask people is, when did you serve and where did you serve? It established a little bit of dialogue. And the answer today was kind of enlightening, wasn't it? Would you share with the audience that today?
We on our, I guess it's about our 26th, 27th hour on our way back, we stopped at a Smithville barbecue, and we were sitting there eating, and we had on our Vietnam veteran hats, and a guy came in with a Vietnam veteran hat, and he came over to the table and shook our hands and told us welcome home. Bill asked him, when did he serve? When was he in Vietnam? And he said, last night. I guess that kind of puts a perspective on it, that it doesn't go away. I mean, you can leave Vietnam, but Vietnam doesn't necessarily leave you.
Well said, Ron. The thing about using the veterans, and I said before, in the classroom as first person, you also have to remember, as you mentioned, that it wasn't just the veteran. It was the veteran's wife, the veteran's sister, the veteran's father.
If you think about it, Bob, for each veteran went over there, his mother, father, sometimes a wife, brothers and sisters, children, aunts, uncles. There was a huge number that the war had an effect on.
Sure.
And in some cases, it was a more traumatic effect, because they would be sitting watching TV and they see Benoit Air Base blow up, or Long Binh ammo dump where Bill was there. That Long Binh ammo dump blew up. Well, his wife didn't know if he had survived that or not, because we didn't have Instagrams. We didn't have any way to contact him right away. The only instant communication was through the Mars radio network, and that was overwhelmed by people trying to get back home.
I remember that for sure.
So the people back home, probably it was more of a post-traumatic stress for them, a lot of them, than it was for the not as much. It was probably equal, but amount, but it was more of them to make to go around.
Well, when you're involved in something, whatever it may be, it's right in your face, not in your imagination. In your imagination, it's terrible. Thoughts you may think, what may happen. And as you mentioned before about going to the wall in D.C., how it's a great place to listen, a great place just to be observant of how people react to the wall. And I noticed at your wall and your play in Texas, a lot of men and women that were coming through were walking very slow and contemplating questions. Some actually don't know what to say. And they're looking around, and they see a name, and Bill rubs them a little rubbing, and he gives them a fixture. And they say, okay, this is my spot in this time in history. And I think, as you mentioned before, thanking us for going, all of the NCBVI thank you for what you've done. Because way back, when we started this endeavor years ago, we had one goal in mind, and the goal was to teach a nation and not let anyone forget their names. You come along as being one of our charter members, speaking to all of the classes, and then this wonderful idea of a play on the wall, it gave everybody another venue where they can say, wait a minute now, I was this, I was that. And when we go to the wall, we listen better. Why take classes to the wall? You've taken many with me. We're more observers than participants. And I hope this spreads with people, and I think it will because of what you and Al have done. And I think Al deserves a little nod also.
Absolutely.
Because Al's wall, and I hope some of you get to see it, we've had it on display several places around the county, and it'll be hopefully used more and more in the future. Al's wall is one of a kind. We call it the small wall, and when we told people in Texas, it was a 1/8 replica of the wall with 58,372 names on there. The look is astonishment, Ron.
One lady came over and looked at it, and she goes, oh, you can really see the names very clearly. Standing back from it, it was so many names, she thought it was going to be so tiny that she couldn't read it. But you get up close to it, you can read each name very clearly and distinctly.
Al did a wonderful job. Excuse me. And the body language, when you hand someone a location on the wall like this, and they walk up and they put their finger on the wall like this, the body language gets closer. They're usually with someone there that they both knew this individual, and they knew the individual's family. And it's such a connection, it's hard to describe what you have created for these people at Nicky Rowe High School. And as you mentioned earlier, the people there that deal with all the educators in the county, in this part of Texas, believe me, they're not being quiet on this. You've opened a door. So. You've opened a wonderful door in Texas, and we expect to hear from them. And I think you mentioned earlier tonight that you've already heard from some of the news media.
Well, we were interviewed, so I went home and downloaded some of the coverage they had. They still got it on their website, the different NBC, ABC, and CBS news website. Their websites for those TV stations there in McAllen had the interviews that we did. So it's a good way of doing it. I guess you can put it on the website here.
CBVI.com.
Yeah.
Yes. I think that's one thing I'd like to mention, too. As we wind down the show, and we're going to have a little preview in a moment about next week's show, and as we move into the holidays. But, Ron, as we move into the holidays, the play and the wall take a special significance this time of year. Because, as we mentioned before on the show, when you miss an entire calendar year of your life, this time of year, as Thanksgiving and Christmas, I think to many, many Americans it's so special. It's so special. And when you miss this time of year, you often hearken back to those that missed everything.
Right.
And I think what you did allows people to also go back to that time in their lives when perhaps this person that they found on the wall was not sitting at the table, was not there in the morning for Christmas. And you start thinking about what could have been. It's not survivor guilt, what we do. I mentioned this before on the air. It's survival responsibility.
Yep.
We have responsibility.
If we don't do it, who will?
Exactly. Now, as far as a preview coming up for the next few weeks, 2 weeks ago we had on the show a man named Russell Page, one of our stout teachers in Wake County schools, and he teaches lessons of Vietnam. Next week we have Mr. Jim Baum, who teaches at Athens Drive. Now, Jim is the, I believe we call him the longest tenured teacher in Wake County who has taught the lessons of Vietnam at Athens Drive High School. Has taken many field trips to D.C. with his classes. I think Jim has probably taken over 500 students to the wall to D.C., has chaperoned it perfectly, has brought them back, and Athens Drive also hosted, if you'll recall, the small wall. There earlier, a lot was last year, I believe, and thousands came through there. So Jim is a special guest, as Russell is also on the show. And Ron, for Bill, of course, and for NCBVI, and all of your brothers in the veterans community, we'd like to thank you not only for being on the show tonight, but for doing what you do and continue to do for the veteran community.
Thank you.
We have a few minutes left, so I'd like to give you a little bit of time, if you have something to say, to the veterans that maybe couldn't make it to the wall in Texas, and maybe have never been to D.C. Maybe a challenge.
Well, the wall is a special and magical place. I know that sounds all spooky and everything, but
No, it sounds
we have been up there on too many occasions where something that's extra coincidental happens. The one that jumps out at us, one of our members was rubbing some names. He was a Marine Corps medic, and he lost a large number of guys in one day, and all their names were together on the wall. And he was rubbing, first time he'd been there, and he was rubbing the names. A young man came up and was looking for a name on the same panel. And when he said the name out loud, Mike just came up, got right in the guy's face and said, "What do you want that name for?" And the guy said, "He's from my hometown. He won the Medal of Honor, so they built a statue, and he's the only name I knew on the wall." Mike relaxed and said, "Good, he should have got the Medal of Honor. He saved lives that day. He died in my arms." What a coincidence that the guy from that guy's hometown shows up at that same moment that Mike's first visit there. That had to be God's hand leading him there. I cannot believe any coincidence enough. I've walked down the wall and looked over and I saw, not even looking for it, and saw the name of a high school friend of mine that was on the wall. It's
wonderful.
It can't just happen like that.
I have gone to the wall with you guys many, many times, and it's a special place for me also. I think for all veterans, it is probably the warmest place in the world. When Bill and I walked to the Valley of the Wall, where the East meets West, and I had the privilege this past fall of my wife and I taking our grandchildren to the wall, and they know about it from the house and from me so much, they actually did their first rubbing on the wall this year. And I was so pleased that they became part of what you talk about.
Yep. It needs to go down through the generations.
It is magical. It's very special. And we are going to wrap up with a thank you again to Ron Harris and for the audience that called in tonight, thanking Joe and Judy and Ange and all those that called in. And as we talk about the trip in Texas, which we will many, many times, and refer to it again as not one of a time, but a high water mark for North Carolina Vietnam veterans, the bridge back, and our goal to teach a nation. None of it could be possible without the man to my right, Mr. Ron Harris. Thank you.
Thank you.
And good night.
You are tuned to the Nissan Communications Network. Our weekly lineup of call-in programs includes Computers 2K Now with Amnon Nissan, Sundays, 9 a.m. till noon. Carrie's Psychic Cafe with Carrie Silkowski, Sundays, 8 till 9 p.m. Health In with Debbie Bruck, Mondays, 11 a.m. till noon. Breaking Free with Marilyn Shannon, Mondays, 1 till 2 p.m. Lessons of Vietnam with NCVVI members, the second and fourth Wednesday of each month from 7:30 till 8:30 p.m. Reawaken Your Brilliance with Julie Seibert, Wednesdays, 9 till 10 p.m. And if you tuned in too late, you can always watch each program in its entirety or download an MP3 audio file of it at www.nissancommunications.com. Sponsored by ThatVidBlasterGuy.com, CarolinaApparel.com, and DeltaForce.net.